It's easy to hear your favorite artist on WFPK from wherever you are. Listen on your smart speaker, live stream from our website at WFPK.org from Louisville Public Media.
Consequence Podcast Network. Hey, welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with It's the Interview Series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org, Consequence, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Thank you, as always, for making your way here, checking out the series. I do hope if you're not already, then you'll hit that subscribe button. I put out 3 new interviews every single week, so it's a great way to keep up with your favorite artist and discover some new ones as well at iTunes and Apple Podcast, at Spotify, Podchaser, NPR, WFPK.org, or YouTube for the video versions. I'm Kyle Meredith. Today, my guest is Jewel. We're going to be talking about her new record, Freewheelin Woman, which she calls the most intense creative process that she's ever been through. We're going to be hearing about how she catches a feeling when songwriting. Once again, co-writing with Steve Poltz, who also co-wrote You Were Meant for Me back on the Pieces of You record, and her changing sounds. We'll get into that as well. Jewel's also going to tell us that, she made a folk album during the pandemic that could be released next. We'll discuss her cover of Maggie Rogers' Alaska, having Darius, Rucker, and Train's Pat Monahan on the record, and being inspired by Tori Amos, although she might not have realized it at the time. And we'll also hear about the, as she says, profound activism of mental health through her Never Broken program. So let's jump into this. We're talking about Freewheelin Woman. It's Kyle Meredith with Jewel. I gotta tell you, I've been such an admirer for so long and such a fan of your music, and this new record, Freewheelin Woman, is just perfect. It is a perfect record. Congratulations on doing what you're doing here, just at this level continuously.
Thank you. I so appreciate that.
This time around, and I don't know if this is the first time, but you're an independent artist. It's sort of self-release. What does that mean for you at this point?
Let's see, I know I wanted to make country records. When was that? Back in like 2000, I don't know, 5 maybe, which in the music industry means you actually have to switch labels. It's a whole different radio system. It's like a really siloed thing. But I negotiated into that contract the ability to make an independent album that was non-competitive in the genre. And I did it because I'd been watching the Food Network, and that was kind of just like the rise of the star chef, the celebrity chef. And I was watching digital happen, right, to music. And it dawned on me that there's going to come a time where we give our music away for free and we make money by selling the pots and pans of whatever is authentic to your brand. That was super interesting to me. And so that's why I fought to have this independent right to make a non-compete album. And by independent, it meant I could have no traditional distribution, none. I didn't get to go through any distribution system that was pre-existing. And so after my first country album, I made an album called Lullaby. I recorded it at my house, original songs, some of my favorite songs. And I was able to get it in the greeting card aisle of Target and the baby aisle of Walmart, because it's where I realized my consumers were now. They moved and shifted. I have sold more of that album than almost any other album I have. That album still to this day funds me not working. I haven't worked in 4 years. That album pays all my bills. It's been an incredible gift. And it's like this quiet little record that nobody really knows about, but it's been incredibly evergreen. So anyway, I love independent albums. This current album isn't truly independent in that way. I licensed it to a proper label. And so I'm going through proper, I don't know if proper is the right word, but established systems, but I'm the copyright holder or the master's holder.
Yeah, but that's still, I mean, I knew about the Lullaby album. I would have never have guessed, for it be a situation like that. But still, it does seem like you have the most control that you could over your career at this point. And I guess that's the important part of the story.
Yeah, I enjoy it.
Well, we get into this one, and again, just an excellent album with Freewheelin Woman, which, as I understand, I was reading some of the interviews, and you had talked about how, you have such a reserve of songs that you could choose from at any point, but decided to go completely from scratch at this moment. Did you have to go looking for stories? Because I guess there has to be a lot of trust in your subconscious at that point that it's going to arrive.
This was the most intense creative process I've ever been through. I have never felt the squeeze of having to write an album in my entire career because of my back catalog. Even when it was a different genre, I'd had many dozens of songs in any genre. But I wanted this to represent who I was now. And that was terrifying because it brought up so much insecurity and doubt. And it brought up really unuseful information, like a chorus should come 30 seconds into a song and a song should be 3 minutes, and what genre and what's popular. Just all that makes bad art. And I get why like Bowie or like a lot of like the heroic artists did a crap ton of drugs in their middle age to develop a new sound, because doing it sober was very psychologically grueling. Because it's like I had to rip out structures that I had adopted and find a wild place in myself at 45 or whatever age I was when I was writing it. And that was hard. It was definitely very hard, but it was one of the most beneficial things I've ever been through.
So, for this to be so much about you, we do get the characters, like there are characters that we hear throughout. Is that just, songwriting tools right there, or did you find these people like represented real people?
Did not represent real people. I grew up on a lot of literature more than I did music. So short story fiction writing, Flannery O'Connor, Chekhov, Nabokov, Steinbeck, they were so good at character studies, and it always uplifted the quote unquote common man. Those were the writers I admired. And so that style of writing was always a real passion of mine. So songs like Half-Life, where you're watching a character, you're trying to develop a character that also is so universal that each of us can relate to it. I can relate to it. How have I been living a half-life too?
I mean, that's my favorite song on the record, by the way, as a personal half-life. I wrote down my exact words is, my God, this song is so good. And it sounds so good. Could you just go further into the story if you don't mind on that one? Because I would love to kind of hear what the inspiration for it was.
When I sit down to write by myself, I don't have a title or an idea at all. I just sit down and I call it catching a feeling. I'll just catch a feeling, whatever guitar part you're noodling at sort of creates this mood. And it really is like walking into a scene. And it's sort of like, I don't know, that mood creates an atmosphere, and then you can step into that atmosphere, and it's almost like you can look around like you got dropped into the middle of a movie, I guess. And I would become very observant, and it's a lot of stream of consciousness. And so for whatever reason, Sally came home today. She didn't have a whole lot to say, just set me off on this thing. And you don't know the hook till you get there. It's a weird process, of discovery. It's like walking down a trail and you like looking, there's a vista around the corner. You're like, holy shit, that's cool. But I don't have control over it. It's like, I don't know, you're participating, and it's a hard thing to describe.
Right. But at some points, the whole picture becomes, and then here you are in an interview going, so I don't know what it's about. It's
Yeah, I mean, at some point, it dawned on me this was about two people that were and are engaged in their life in a way that doesn't allow them to enjoy any one thing completely. They're half a wife, half a mom, half a husband, half a worker, half a boss. And the desperation, the sad and silent desperation of people trying to have it all, realizing that they've actually been robbed of significance, of consuming, of metabolizing life in any significant way, and dealing with that through more numbing, anxiety medication, getting stoned in the parking lot before you have to come into your wife. It's a depressing tale.
And still, it sounds good. It's fun to listen. That's I think it might have been press release or another interview. You kind of along that line, you had said something about like a lot of these songs have to do with overcoming something, like the characters overcoming something, maybe you overcoming something. For that to sort of be the thing that's going on in the songs, do you know why? What kind of drove that direction lyrically?
I knew that I wanted the album to feel empowered. I feel empowered. My life was hard. It was touch and go whether I would become a more bitter person, and be able to digest these experiences, and whether I would let them make me more bitter and more unloving and more mistrustful, or whether I could convert this poison, if you will, into more love and more kindness and more generosity. And in my business as well, not many women make it as singer-songwriters. The only females that are really iconic, honestly, are Madonna and Cher, and they're pop stars. And so the way they achieved that, or very different mechanisms than somebody like me could achieve it or would want to achieve it. Bob Dylan and Neil Young have tremendous notoriety. Joni Mitchell's every bit as deserving, but can't sell the same tickets. I don't believe she's thought of with the same gravitas. And I believe she should be. So as a young kid that wanted to be one of the best singer-songwriters of all time, looking at where's my roadmap, who are my heroes in the female category, it's an unkind industry to women as we age. And so all that to say, when I was making this record, I wanted it to be who I am now, what I am now, a real sense of accomplishment. I believe I'm at my writing height. I believe I'm at the heights of my ability as a singer. And I'm proud to be a woman. I'm proud to be middle-aged. I'm proud to be a mom. And it's a lot of stuff you just never hear about in the music business. And I wanted it to be loud. I wanted it to be what I led with. And that's why I wanted to write it from scratch. So a lot of the songs are about overcoming something, but also hopefully with a real sense of empowerment, that you just keep going and you're making choices, and what choices are you making, and to feel empowered by that.
Does that make like, the lead off cut Long Way Round, like when I was listening to that, I thought this feels like it could be like the thesis for your life, for your career, for this album. Does it feel like the same thing for you?
Yeah, that song, and why I wanted to lead with does feel like the thesis of the ethos, and of the thing I wanted to portray. Is sometimes you do take the long way around. We all do. It's a long and twisting road, and sort of this celebration, the woohoo, if you will, of it all.
Like the gypsy, maybe we've already touched on it with the other characters, but that was one of those, like using a gypsy in a song, like one of another thing that just sort of comes. Does the gypsy represent someone? Or not someone in specific, but something.
I really struggled with that word. I was worried the word's derogatory. I did have tried in Google, is that an appropriative term? It was unclear. I really hope it's not. I mean, no disrespect. There's not a single syllable word really for a mystical oracle. I tried to use priest, but it just seems too, I dare say, patriarchal. So I settled on gypsy. To me, that just represents the knowing that each of us can access, maybe reflected through somebody else or just by going within, but just a nod to the unseen that exists behind the scene, I guess.
Yeah, I won't speak for anything derogatory or not, but I would think, like, Gypsy Woman, one of the great all-time songs right there, and it doesn't seem any problem with that on that side of things.
Yeah.
So it's a good company to be in anyway. And Steve Poltz, co-writing on, I mean, so Steve, in your songwriting relationship goes back to the first album. What continues that? Like, what do you get out of that partnership?
I love Poltzy. We're just lifelong friends and mates. I have a lot of respect for him. He's a tremendous writer, very, very prolific, really playful, so I can become overly serious and digging myself into a hole of not liking anything I'm writing. And he just comes along gleefully, and they just spill out of him in a rainbow array of colors and silliness and absurdity. And it's a good mix, because I always call it, he likes to pee on a song. Like, he likes to take a perfectly good song and ruin it with the dumbest line or just absurdity, where I always rein that part in, and he helps me be a little more playful.
Nice balance. What about the sound of it? Like, it does sort of have a Southern sound. What drove you in that direction?
I don't like repeating myself, just because I like to learn and push myself. I like to be on the edge of failure. I like the risk. I don't know. I don't know why, but I like that everything could go horribly wrong, because that means I really put myself out there. It means I really extended beyond my ability, and it doesn't always work out, but I would not change a thing. That's what I value. I guess that's my fuel as an artist. It's such a personal thing. I noticed it's something other people really don't understand. The way the press was with the pop album, it was so funny. You would have thought I had murdered someone. Like, it was so disappointing to people that a singer-songwriter that was credible would make a pop album. It was so precious and so funny. Is she still our same Jewel? Like, I found that so funny, and I love that album. All that to say, I wanted to push myself into some new territory. There's a huge influence in my life I've never been able to pay tribute to, and that was R&B and soul and Muscle Shoals stuff. I really cut my teeth on a lot of those singers, especially. And so I wanted the album to sort of have a new sound that might be sort of a Muscle Shoals-ish type of thing. Bill Withers had just passed, and so I wanted to pay a tribute to him. That's why I wrote Grateful. And Butch, Walker, my producer, is just, he's an incredibly eclectic, talented musician and producer. And so we were able to hopefully, I think this is the first record, I didn't realize it at the time, but I listened back to it for the first time and since I made it, which is a couple of years. And I finally got every one of my styles on one album. It was like I finally figured out, like, there's hardcore folk, there's country leaning Americana stuff, there's straight up pop, and then there's sort of this new thing of, I guess, a more soul influence. And hopefully it makes sense. I think it does.
Yeah, no, the way it's laid out too, the way things kind of not bleed into each other, but lead to the next song. Like, it's really well laid out. And that's, I mean, it is interesting. And of course, being a fan, I've been along for the ride through the genres. That I think that's actually been one of the things I like most about following you is that sense of adventure, and to hear that line again that we were talking about earlier, that at any given point you've got at least 10 or 12 songs to represent whatever genre you're going into. I'll take the chance and ask this one: what else do you want to do? What other songs are lying there waiting to be heard in various sounds?
The way I describe music, for me, I consumed a lot of variety. It's just what I liked. I listened to as much Bob Dylan as I did Marvin Gaye, for instance. And so I internalized that. And so of course it's going to come back out of me. And I liken it to a closet. I have sweatpants, yoga pants, ball gowns, jeans, athletic clothing. If I wear sweatpants one day and a couture gown the next day, nobody says, Jewel, who are you? It just makes sense to people. That I feel like my music is my closet. Like, I'm in a more playful mood and I wanted to write 0304. As far as what I'll do in the future, I don't know. I've been wanting to push myself vocally. I wrote a much more ambitious album vocally. I feel like I really pushed myself on my melodies and showcasing more of my technical ability, which for some reason I was just never interested in doing. There's a lot of stuff I'd like to do. I like rock music. I like classical music. Whether I do those things, I have no idea. I love the idea of a spoken word album mixed with, I don't know, ambient music, and kind of creating like a vibe that way. I do want to do another lullaby album, but during the pandemic, I cut a folk album, like a really very like weird, very sparse, but layering tons of strange harmonies onto pretty unusual songs. So that might be what happens next.
I love any time an artist says weird. That's when I sign up for. That's like, yes, whatever you're doing, do that. Let's see. And I just want to hit on so many things here. I've got to make my choices too. You covered Alaska. It's such a great cover of Maggie's song right there. I'm sure for obvious reasons too, home state right there. But was there any other thing that kind of that spoke to you about that one?
I like the song. I think it's a great song. I can't remember when JD and I were talking about it'd be fun to cover a couple songs. Maybe it was when I was doing The Masked Singer and I was just really enjoying like singing songs I really admired. Yeah, I wouldn't mind doing more. I think it's really fun there's so many good songs out there.
Yeah. And you put out that EP with the Masked Singer too, the Queen of Hearts EP. And not everybody can pull that off, by the way. And it's so good. It's so good what you're doing with it. Do you bring those out on the road? We got a tour coming up. We got to hit on here too. I mean, are you using those, working those covers into the set?
I'm going out with Blues Traveler and Train. I'm really excited to be with everybody on tour, but it does limit my set time. So I won't get to covers. It'll probably be just getting through, the hits and then some new songs. But I loved, Lovey Ann Rose, Edith Piaf dared me to sing. I feel like she challenged me. I dare you. It was like it's so heroic. Her singing is heroic. Sarah Vaughan's singing is heroic, and they inspired me. And being able to pay tribute to them, or Patsy Cline, for me was just a real treat. And
you mentioned, of course, the tour, yes, with Train, with Blues Traveler. Train's also on this record. Pat's on the record. You've got Darius Rucker on the record. That was a thing of, Darius, Pat, yourself, of course, you all came to prominence from the same era. Maybe they're just friends, but do you sort of think about that when you're having them as guests on? Like, this does speak from a point of view of a time.
Yeah, it was kind of neat. I was at a party in LA, and it was a lot of musicians I haven't seen, right? We're all separate on the road. It's kind of sad. There's a class of, but we never go to school together because we're all doing separate tours and albums. And I got to hang out with Beck and Grohl and all these musicians that are just such a part of my life, except we never really get to hang out. So it was my little way of doing a yearbook, having Pat and Darius on there. And I was really blown away by Darius. I love him. I think he's a really talented artist. I've really admired his country career as well, but I think he sings his ass off. That's not an easy song to sing. And I was very impressed. I was really tickled. People should hear it.
Yeah. When his voice comes in, no, it's great. With the 90s folks in mind too, is almost a little nod to Tori Amos, or is that just kind of musical coincidence there?
I didn't realize it at the time when I was writing the story, but hearing it back, somebody mentioned it online and I was like, fuck yes, that is. Like, she was a huge part of my, before I came out, she was out, she was definitely influencing me. And she's, again, such a fantastic artist and visionary. And she had such a rascally great spirit. It was so perfect for the 90s and what it took for a woman to do anything in the 90s. Yeah, she's tremendous. So I didn't realize it at the time, but listening back has to have, had that influence.
And those moments happen. Again, as a fan of both of you guys, that's one of those like, like Venn diagrams all coming together. It's it's all happening right there. This record, again, I'm such a fan, Jewel, of this and Freewheelin Woman. And I also want to say, not to leave us too much on a down note, but with everything that's been happening this week in the world, and your song Hands has just been in my head, especially those first few lines, and do you still believe them as much as when you wrote those?
Absolutely. The last 10 years or 7 years at least, I've been building a business outside of music in mental health, just to bring mental health tools that anybody can practice without therapy that will create neurological change. There's a website called jewelneverbroken.com. And we're scaling those tools that I sort of cultivated for myself so I wouldn't kill myself. So I would be able to change pain points and habits in my own life, and offering them in the workplace and in schools. And obviously what's happening right now is just such a tragic heartbreak. You realize what unkindness is, the abuse of unkindness. And I really hope that political figures and everybody can see the seriousness of creating otherness, because we pay huge prices. But yeah, that song is continually my medicine. I sing it to soothe myself. The reason I wrote Lullaby was those are all songs to soothe my own anxiety. Highly recommend it if anybody's having anxiety, because I literally use that record to calm myself down. Yeah, it's a hard time. I think people have to have a lot of courage to persevere. And I guess I would just say, don't discount what an act of activism it is to heal yourself. I really feel like everybody's so busy yelling at everyone else about what they're doing wrong that no one is healing their own issues. And that's the most profound form of activism we have, is to heal ourselves and then to extend humanity to people around us.
It's beautifully said, and just one of the all-time great songs there. Congratulations again, Freewheelin Woman. I love it so much, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk about it. This has been a real pleasure for me.
It's so fun. I've not got to talk to anybody about the album, so it was very enjoyable for me. Thank you.
My thanks to Jewel. The new record is called Freewheelin Woman. Big thanks to you as well for checking out the episode. Hit that subscribe button before you get out of here. Again, new episodes Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 3 a week, to keep up with your favorite artists and discover some new ones at iTunes and Apple Podcasts, at Spotify, Podchaser, NPR, YouTube for the video versions, anywhere you get your podcasts from. Subscribe to Kyle Meredith with. Then after that, head over to WFPK.org. That's where I do a show Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern. An hour full of song premieres, music news, anniversary spins, and bonus interviews, again, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern at WFPK.org. And you can find me on the social media spots, mostly Twitter, occasionally Facebook and Instagram, all three of them at Kyle Meredith. Do hope you like and follow along. That does it for another edition. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time. Consequence Podcast Network.
It's easy to hear your favorite artist on WFPK from wherever you are. Listen on your smart speaker, live stream from our website at WFPK.org, from Louisville Public Media.